Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. Welcome back to the show. We are excited to have Kaija Spencer joining us here today live on the podcast and the Zoomcast to talk about her work at KSPEN Beautiful. Tell us a little bit about what you do, Kaija.
I am a holistic provider. So I got into this just haphazardly for myself, but as a holistic provider, I focus in on providing individuals with, I don't like to use the term alternative, but we have to use the term alternative for the fact that it's not the traditional medical way. And so I provide them with alternative measures into making sure that they're addressing their medical needs, whether it's through yoga, whether it's through herbals, or whether it's through meditative practices.
Beautiful. Well, we're excited to have you here and want to tell everyone how we can contact you before we begin.
Yes, you can contact me at 470-588-5995, or you can go via my website at kspenbeautiful.com. And you can contact me there as well via email or on social media. You can always contact me that way as well.
Perfect. So reading about you, you dedicate yourself to helping, people in the physical, mental, spiritual, and health maintenance. Now, also, you are an energy healer. Are you a
I
Reiki
am. I am
practitioner?
also a Reiki practitioner.
Great.
So, with everything, there are certain things that you can learn, and there are certain things that you inherently get. And for me, Reiki is something that I inherited, not necessarily. I didn't know what it was until I actually started getting into my holistic practices and learning more. So for me, the Reiki actually came last, because I knew my family are farmers. They never really took medicine. So the herbal part was easier for me because I knew that very well.
Mm-hmm.
But I never really thought of the Reiki as a practice, only because in my family, Reiki is very personal. It's very endearing. So when a person is placing their hands on you in a healing practice, it's very private and personal in that way. And so for me, Reiki is still that way for me. I see a lot of practitioners that are out in the open with how they practice, and they practice out with lives, but for me, that's not how I practice, because for me it's personal, and for me it's a private thing where because you're it's a spiritual, it's an energy, it's a healing practice, and for me it's private.
Well,
That's something that you do.
Well, that's what I was going to ask about Reiki, because not everybody is aware of what this even is. Do you mind telling us a little bit about diving deeper
Sure.
into the energy healing process, what it could help with, and how it works? Because
Yeah,
by the way,
sure.
you're based out of Atlanta, Georgia, right?
Correct. I am
And
based out of Atlanta, Georgia, but you can also do Reiki and distance healing. So it is not just a thing that you have to do in person, but Reiki has very multiple limbs that you can learn from. It's a Japanese healing practice, in which the practitioner has learned how to align themselves with the life force energy of the universe, and can help provide that same energy and that same magnificent power through their hands into the individual that they are providing the service to. And so what that does is it provides the energy that we provide through the life force energy. A practitioner doesn't actually know what it is going to do. It does what your body needs
mm-hmm.
and goes to the areas your body needs the most. So if you're in a place where you need more spiritual healing, that's what it's going to do. If you're in
Yeah.
a place where you need more energy healing, that's what it's going to do. If you're in a place where you need more of a physical
Yeah.
healing, that's what it's going to do. We don't really control the energy. We just move across your body to ensure energy is provided to your entire body. So typically we start at the head, we work our way to the feet, and we work our way back up. Depending on the practitioner, depends on if they have you turn over or if they have you turn onto the other, stay on one side. If you're doing it virtually, the practitioner uses a proxy. The proxy is usually, people find this funny, the proxy is usually either a teddy bear, so that we can have all the limbs of the human body, or it's a board so that we have all the limbs of the human body. But the process is, like I said, it's one of those things where the energy is provided to you. Right now, Reiki is even being provided inside of hospitals to support with healing practices, because it has been found to help reduce some of the stress levels that people are having in the midst of having medical conditions. And for that reason, it's being used in that way to help people kind of relax and allow their body to heal. We know that stress is also one of those things that causes some of our illnesses. So Reiki is being used by some nurses and doctors to support individuals with their healing process, even in hospitals.
Wow. And I heard about chronic pain.
Yes,
And
absolutely. Chronic
like,
pain is,
mm-hmm,
some cancer patients get a very good healing from it. And it's not that it's actually healing. The thing is that it's actually providing you, the individual, with the ability to relax,
mm-hmm.
rest. It's good for anxiety. If your energy level is very high, it helps to calm the body. It is a practice that I would say, if you haven't had it done before, I would say just step out of your comfort zone and just allow
Yeah.
a practitioner to support you and see how it works for you. When it comes to things that are not in the traditional medicine realm, it is having to take time to do a little research, ask a couple of questions, and step out of your comfort zone and see what works for your body. Everybody's body and how you heal is different, and sometimes you have to find a different way to support yourself.
Beautiful. Well, also, I want to point out, I think before we talk more about the work that you're doing virtually in person, and there's still so much more with the doula services, prenatal yoga, and meditation, also crystal healing. I want to know about you, Kaija. Tell me where you grew up. Tell us your backstory. I think it's important for us to
Okay,
get to know
so
you.
my backstory is that I am a Southern girl at heart, born and bred Southern. I am from what used to be South Georgia is now merging into part of Metro Atlanta. And so some of the practices that I do are based out of the fact that I am only third generation removed from the farm. So like even in my youth, we used to go back to the farm and pick fruit and pick vegetables and help. I know how to can and all of those kind of things. So I'm still technically, in some of my ways, I'm still a farm girl. But some of the things that I love most about being a farm girl is that I know how to do things and I know how to have things freshly done for myself. And so it's easier for me to think about the health and wellness component when you know how to
Hmm.
can for yourself and not put all those preservatives in your food, and kind of removing some of those things that are maybe causing some of our health issues. There's a lot of questions about why some of these issues are coming up more prevalently right now. And so we have to think about the things that we're doing in our health. And so also, I'm a teacher by trade, I'm an educator. I find it very important to educate my community. I find it very important to educate individuals. I don't mind answering questions. I don't mind. It doesn't bother me if a person just wants to talk to me and ask me questions, but they're not um, I'm not providing their service, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
It's not about the money for me. It's more about helping people find a way to um, help themselves with their health in the best way, because we know that with our medications, there are a lot of side effects. And we need to reduce what we're taking in. We might not be able to get completely off the medication, but if we can reduce it, it's much better than if we are on a high dose, especially if all it takes is to take a herbal, which is natural, which will come right out of your system. And so it's those kind of conversations that I'm very open to support people and helping them with understanding how what we call alternative supports can help with our mainstream medical supports, and that it should be a collaborative team effort. It shouldn't be your medical staff is on one side and your alternative supports on the other side. There should be some communication between them so that you'll know what's working and what's not, so that you'll know what's happening for your body and what's in the best interest of your body.
Well, also, let's remind everyone how we can reach out to you. We're about halfway through the show, so that's always an important thing to do.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Again, you can reach me on social media on Facebook or Instagram at KSPEN Beautiful. You can also reach me via phone at 470-588 5995. You can also reach me on my website at kspenbeautiful.com.
Perfect. And then also, there's so much more to your services. Where did you want to go to next?
Um, Well, right now, I think what's next that should be important, especially in women's health, is the postpartum care. Unfortunately, we're having to have some courageous conversations about women's health and pregnancy and birthing. And we also need to have the conversation of after a woman gives birth, how she manages that, especially in today's world where a lot of women are not living with their family or near their family or their large support system to help them with how to manage becoming a mother. And it doesn't matter if it's the first time, the second time, the third time, it doesn't how many times it happens. We also have to remember that the body goes through changes, the hormones are going through changes, and it is a time that a woman really does need support. And that support can come via family, via friends, via a doula, or a postpartum care provider. And so doula, postpartum care, same difference. But it is important to have those individuals close by just to support you with, even if it's just a simple thing as running errands. Especially in these winter months when it's not in the best interest of a new mom to be out in
Mm-hmm.
cold weather. Um, just something as simple as running errands, something as simple as answering questions on what to do if a baby does a certain thing. In the African American and Hispanic population, SIDS is still a big issue.
Mm-hmm.
And so we also have to make sure that we're having those conversations of how do we care for the baby at this time, and what do we need to be looking for? What are we monitoring to make sure that we don't have to have a situation where the baby goes to sleep and never wakes back up? So it's a concern that a lot of people don't really know a lot about the fact that some of these things are still prevalent in the community, and that mental health of moms with today's society and having to provide, and the stress of going back to work so quickly after giving birth also brings about a level of stress that moms need support with that as well. So we need to always think about those things that are supportive and helpful to moms as they are going through the birthing process, coming out of the birthing process, and entering back into the workforce.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's true. That's speaking of workforce, I just got to ask, what happened with you in your career and work for so many people during the pandemic? I mean,
Well, for during the pandemic, it was very difficult because, majority of the schools closed. And then when the schools closed, it was very stressful, mainly because we were still trying to provide for students, but we were learning at the same time. As an educator, we are accustomed to having students in front of us. And then to move to a virtual setup was different, not just for parents, but also for educators as well. We know the difficult things that take place inside of a classroom, so we knew how difficult it would be to manage children at home. And so sometimes those meditative practices weren't just for me. They were
Yeah.
for my kids and my parents to make sure that we didn't lose it in the process of being at home with these little people. When it's not something they're accustomed to. Some of my students didn't even really get any outside time.
Yeah.
So they didn't get to go outside and run around because parents were very protective during that time. So it brought about having to find different ways of supporting families and individuals with how to manage the the solitude of being inside of your home for such a stretch, and also then having to have little people inside of your home for such a long time. And how do you manage that? Teaching breath work, teaching how to take a moment, get up before the kids and meditate and bring yourself into a calm place before that hectic part of the day starts, how to calm yourself down at the end of the day, knowing that the same thing is about to happen tomorrow because no one's going anywhere. um it's just it was different
Yeah.
for a multitude of reasons. um and I commend parents that were able to manage and keep their sanity. It was
Well,
just
yeah, a lot of us, and even like, gosh, loss of job, loss of career, loss of, but this whole mental angst and this
yeah.
mental condition of stress, anxiety that we all are living in. A lot of your practices can help. And, with the yoga, with the crystals healing,
Mhm.
that I want to hear more about too. What do you
Yes.
recommend for those that are anxious and all?
For anxiety, it is best to utilize either a clear quartz, only because clear quartz is useful for everything. And so when you're anxious, sometimes you don't know what the antecedent was, what's causing it. And sometimes at work what's causing your anxiety. In your personal life, sometimes it can be a compound of things. And so just using a clear quartz can help with anxiety, just because you need to just hold on to it, place it near your chest, take some deep breaths, and just relax. It's one of those things where anxiety needs to also have a meditative phase where you sit and just take some deep breaths and take a moment. And it's hard to stop your mind from thinking.
Yeah.
And so if you focus on the breaths and rather than all the thoughts that are going through your head, it brings you to a different place. So if you just focus on the breaths, not the thoughts, and then when you do that, it brings you to a different place. It allows you to relax. It's almost like how when a person, you remember when we were younger, they would say if a person had a panic attack, you would give them a paper bag and let them breathe into it and blow the bag up. And it's
Absolutely.
kind of similar, but it's one of those things where I realize it's not about the blowing up of the bag. The bag was a distraction. So the bag was a distraction. It's more about focusing on the breath. You don't necessarily need a bag. You need to focus on the breath so that you can calm your mind and allow your mind to take a moment to step away from what's causing you to get so excited or so anxious so that you can calm down. We we react to things differently when we don't step away from them. And so when we step away, we can have a very focused response to it. We have to make sure that we're also not just talking about this as adults, but
Yeah.
with the pandemic, this is also an issue for our children.
Yeah.
um, how to manage when I get upset, how to manage when I get stressed out. They're also having an issue with how to respond to those things. And sometimes it's just
Yeah.
a step away.
Mm-hmm.
You just need a mental
It's
break. And
totally.
so because at this point in time, I support teachers. So now I give teachers mental breaks. I give students mental breaks. It's those things that have to happen because that's something that the students didn't have
Ah,
during
yeah.
COVID. They
So
they
true.
didn't have those conversations.
Nope.
And so our counseling is very important. Um, Inside of your schoolhouse, having social emotional learning experiences for children is very important right now, because that's something that, although we're back in buildings
Mm-hmm.
and they're socially interacting, we have to remember that they missed 2 years of interaction. So technically,
Wow.
their age and where they are socially doesn't match.
Yeah.
So we have that you might have a 7-year-old, but
I
their
do. I have a six
social
and 8-year-old, by the way, but yeah.
so you might have a 7-year-old, their social interactions are still at a 5-year-old level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so we have to remember that when we're talking about children and the fact that we just went through a pandemic, we're saying they're 7 and we're expecting a 7-year-old, but that's not where they are.
Yeah.
We have to be honest about what just happened for 2 years. They're not there. We're going to have to take a step back and reflect on the
Mm-hmm.
fact that physically and age wise, they are that age. However, socially and emotionally, what is their age? Did they interact with other individuals in the way we're expecting them to interact right now
Yeah.
for 2 years? And if they didn't, we have to reflect on what do we need to do to make sure that they can close those gaps between their physical age and their social and emotional age, because they're not the same age in those two areas. They're one physical age and they're one social emotional age. We have to address that.
Got it. Well, thank you for sharing that. Wow, we still, oh my gosh, we're just about out of time. You only have 2 minutes
Okay.
left on the show. Kaija, what else did you want to share? Wow.
I would just like to let everyone know that, I know that we have a medical practice, and I love the medical profession. I don't want anyone to think any different, but I do want to make it important. I want to make this important statement. We have to remember that the medical practice is technically, according to our society and to our cultures and to the history of the globe, a global culture, the medical practice is fairly young. And so we have to remember that those practices prior to them did have some substance. Those practices were available, they worked, people survived, people lived. And so people that are providing these same practices, whether you agree with them or not, are not taking away from the medical practice, supporting the medical practice. We're just saying that sometimes the medical practice also needs to take into account some of the spiritual, the emotional, and the energy, because all of that is part of our existence. We are not just the physical being we see, we are more than that. And so we need to address the fact that sometimes we need to make sure that what we're doing is encompassing all of us and not just one part of us, because if we only focus on the one part, sometimes we're not getting everything we need to get the healing we need. And so, if we just focus on that, I think that we will see a huge difference in how people are healing, or how people are addressing their issues and concerns, and how we can address some of these mental, some of these emotional, and some of these spiritual situations that people are going through currently.
Well, thank you so much for being here, for joining us. Nice getting to know you. Do
Okay.
you offer initial consultation if someone wants to speak, to try to get a feel for maybe what they
Yes,
need, for what it is? So you do. So,
I
and
do.
great. And how can we call you?
You can call me at 470-588-5995, or contact me on my website at kspenbeautiful.com, or on social media. I do a free consult.
Perfect.
Um, just because when it comes to personal healings in this nature, it is a personal thing. So you want to get to know the person that you're working with, just
Yeah,
like you would
of
your medical
course.
professional. So I
Aw.
do a free consult just so you can get to know me, get a feel for me, and see if that works. And that's in any aspect of what I do, whether it's yoga, postpartum doula, everything that I do a free consult.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Pleasure having you
Thank
here
you.
and looking
I
forward to
appreciate it.
thank you. The next time we get to connect, you have a great day, okay?
All right, you too. Thank you so
Thanks
much.
so much. And to all of
All
our
right.
listeners and viewers, stay tuned. We'll be right back with more after the break. Don't go anywhere.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.